the host of the Amicus Law podcast, and in her free time, an author of the best-selling Lady Justice, Women, the Law, and the Battle to Save America. Dahlia, this case, which we'll call Chevron for short, is really important. There's been a slew of huge cases that have come out of SCOTUS in the last few weeks, but this one hits Americans hard. All Americans, not Americans that are facing criminal charges, not Americans that are facing civil causes of action. I'm talking all Americans. 40 years Chevron's been on the books. It has been precedent, and yet this Supreme Court has decided precedent means something totally different than what you and I learned when we were in law school. Take us through a really short description of what this decision means for Americans.
Hi, Katie. I think maybe the easiest way to explain it is that when we think about how government works, we often make the mistake of thinking that Joe Biden and Donald Trump standing there talking about their climate policy or their veterans policy or their monetary policy, that's a decision they make themselves at home, at their desk. That's not how government works. It's not how government has worked for a very long time. Government works because there are many, many, many federal agencies that decide policy. And whether it's, the ATF, the EPA, whether it is the CDC, it is full of experts and scientists. And if they make bad policy in 4 years, you can vote for a different president and get a new head of the agency and new policies. The Supreme Court, since Chevron for 40 years, has said, you know what, when a rule is ambiguous, we're going to defer to the agency and let them tell us what nitrous oxide, which is actually nitrogen oxide, Justice Gorsuch got it wrong, does as a pollutant. We're going to let the agencies decide whether mifepristone is a safe and healthy abortion drug. We're going to let the agencies decide whether a bump stock is actually a machine gun. What the court's been doing sort of seriatim for the last couple of years is undermining that one by one and case by case. So 2 weeks ago, we had Clarence Thomas telling us that he knows how machine guns work better than ATF. And we had a judge, Matthew Kaczmarek, telling us that he knows better than the FDA how to regulate drugs. So you're right. They kind of arrogate all this expertise to themselves. What's different in Chevron is they did it all in one fell swoop. We're not going to go case by case, agency by agency anymore. The court has literally just said that when there is a tie and an agency rule is unclear or ambiguous, we're going to let the courts decide. We're going to take it out of the hands of agencies. And as you said, we've been seeing this all term. Last year we had Sam Alito explaining how swamplands work. This year we have Sam how emergency medicine works. And now we have Justice Gorsuch telling us how air pollution works. And now in one case, it's not going to be a bunch of cases. Judges across the country are going to get to substitute their judgment about science, about the water we drink, about clean air, about the drugs we take, about how to land an airplane. And the court says that's the way it's going to be.
So, Dahlia, let's talk about the practical implications that you just explained to our viewers. So it's not just the Supreme Court and those 9 justices that are going to be able to interpret the administrative agency's intent, purpose, and the law that Congress passes, by the way, because the Constitution says Congress passes the law, right? There's a reason why we have our branches of government. But are you saying then, Dahlia, that a trial court judge in some court in some state can use his or her interpretation of a law to be able to now decide something that impacts the litigants there? And then are we going to expect to see more litigation then wind its way all the way back to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I mean, you just described the mifepristone case, right? We had one judge in Amarillo, Texas, who said he didn't like the way the FDA regulated a drug that has been, determined by scientists there for many decades to be one of the safest drugs on the market. And he was going to take it off the market. And we had that case go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In this particular instance, the court thought his interpretation was wrong. His invocation of the Comstock Act and other things was wrong, but also invited litigants to come on back and try again next year who have standing. So I think you are actually saying that any judge in the country who wants to rewrite or rethink an agency rule gets to do that. And you're exactly right, Katie. The knock here is, Congress has to write rules with more specificity. If they can get the 0.0002% numbers right on carbon emissions, then that's fine. But that's not how Congress writes statutes. Congress can't spend its life, Congress can barely do anything, but it can't write statutes with sufficient specificities that there's no ambiguity. And so then the question really is, as you say, who gets to determine in a case of an ambiguous or open-ended statute how we're going to interpret that? And the court has decided, the courts.
Dahlia, one of the things that I hear often from conservative, groups is they scream about what they call judicial activism that comes from what they think are liberals. They talk about how judges need to be on the bench because they need to follow the laws and they need to respect precedent, which is something that we've seen tested time and time again during confirmation hearings. And yet this smacks of not only gross hubris on the part of the Supreme Court, but it also smacks of selective judicial activism, doesn't it? It's this idea that when you wholesale get rid of Chevron, now you as a judge can be activist. You can be an activist as a judge in terms of how you want to see something turn out on a particular issue.
You're exactly right. And the proof of that is that the biggest fan of Chevron was Justice Antonin Scalia. Why? Because he was a very, very ferocious opponent of justices putting their own ideas, often he thought dopey, unsubstantiated ideas, into policy. And so Chevron was not necessarily a liberal idea. It was an effort to cabin and constrain judicial overreach. The fact that Justice Scalia would probably look at yesterday's Chevron decision in Loper Bright and say, this is insane. This is the antithesis of what I consider judicial humility, tells you how far the conservative wing of the court has moved away from Justice Antonin Scalia, who was often considered one of the most conservative jurists of the last 50 years. So an idea that was perfectly workable for him, judges, get your hands off policy, let the agencies decide, is now way, way, way too moderate for the Chief Justice of the court.
Dahlia, quickly before I let you go, I have like a second, but I want to know your call about the criminal immunity decision that's coming out on Monday.
I'm pretty worried, and I think it means a lot that the court slow-walked it right on into July. They usually ended the term on the last day of June, and I also worry that some of the language in that Fisher case that came down about January 6th rioters opens the door for big claims about government overreach and, the deep state and the FBI. I'm pretty worried.
Dahlia Lithwick, thank you so much for making us so much smarter. I'm going to leave our viewers and you with the following from our good friend Steve Vladeck, who I know that you know. There's been 30 non-unanimous SCOTUS rulings so far. 9 of those 30 have been that 6-3 split with Republicans in the majority and Democrats in dissent. Still to come on the Katie Phang Show, justice denied how Judge Aileen Cannon continues to grind Donald Trump's classified documents case to a halt, and how special counsel Jack Smith is fighting back.
It's electric, it's gas. It really is both. The Lexus RX plug-in hybrid.
Get special offers on select Lexus models.
At Leesa, we're different from other mattress companies because everything we make gives better sleep to those who need it, which is why Leesa donates thousands of mattresses each year to shelters. Shop the sale and wake up differently with Leesa.
Strength is inside of you.
New Premiere by Kerastase Dual Action Repair Hair Care with citric acid and glycerin, frees hair from calcium buildup, reconnects broken links between keratin chains, restoring up to 99% of hair's original strength. New Premiere by Kerastase.
This is Rochelle, who gives you a shot. Rebecca is there when you feel not so hot. This is Larissa, who's feeling blown up. And this here is Winnie, who zhuzhed up their cup. This is Victoria, helping women stay healthy. These are your kids, snacking snacks made with veggies. And Maddie can help you find your new favorite color. And Kyle helps find meds for under $10. Whoever you are, wherever, whenever. At CVS, healthier happens together.
Prom day is July 16th and the 17th. With all these deals, I could be more than Megan Thee Stallion. I could be Megan the...
It's Prime Day. you want free shipping. Yeah, start clicking.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. If you wanna view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Wanna change the world, there's nothing to it.
Time is luxury. Who you spend it with, what you spend it doing, why we spend so much time designing and refining, creating the control and the feel that defines electric performance, to make the time you spend behind the wheel of a Polestar the best time of your day.
Just to brush the flies away.
Build and order now at polestar.com.
Numbers. They never lie. They tell it like it is. They don't lean politically to the left or to the right. In the end, numbers tell stories that words alone can't. And when you look at the world through numbers, somehow it all adds up.
Trump-appointed Judge Eileen Cannon continues to slow walk the former president's classified documents case at an almost glacial pace. On Thursday, Cannon denied a request from Donald Trump's lawyers for a so-called Frank's hearing to contest the truthfulness of the FBI search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. But in that exact same order, she also called for yet another evidentiary hearing regarding other challenges made by Trump's lawyers regarding the FBI search warrant. In her 11-page order, Cannon said that, quote, further factual development is warranted, and that Trump's defense lawyers were entitled to a hearing on whether prosecutors had misused statements by one of his lawyers. That hearing right now has no date set, much like the trial itself, which is indefinitely on hold. Joining me now is Matthew Seligman, a partner at Stris & Maher, a fellow at the Constitutional Law Center at Stanford Law School, and the co-author of How to Steal a Presidential Election. Matthew, I hope you did not give the blueprint to Donald Trump. Let's start with what happened last Friday in Fort Pierce, one of my favorite haunts. You were actually in the courtroom arguing as an amicus, as a friend of the court, on behalf of Special Counsel Jack Smith's position that he was properly appointed according to the Appointments Clause as Special Counsel. Kind of quickly, take our viewers through what happened in court that day.
Thanks for having me, Katie. So it was extraordinarily unusual for a court, and especially a trial court, to have amici like me to argue in a case. And so even at the Supreme Court, where there are amicus briefs in every single case, sometimes dozens or even hundreds, less than 0.25% of the time does the court permit amici to actually argue in the oral argument. But in early May, Judge Cannon asked the amici who had filed on this issue of the constitutionality of the appointment of the special counsel whether they wanted to participate in the argument. And the defendant, Trump's amici, said they did. And so we wanted to participate to give equal time to our position. It was a hearing that lasted almost 5 hours, which is a lot of time to give to an issue that has been raised in many courts across the country over the last 50 years and rejected every single time.
Matthew, let's switch gears because you're very busy, and you wrote a amicus brief. I guess you say amicus, or maybe you say amicus, tomato. So you wrote an amicus brief for the Supreme Court in Fisher. And this decision that came out yesterday from the Supreme Court on Fisher is very important because there are some doom and gloom people that think that this decision will adversely impact Special Counsel Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump in the various election interference cases that he's facing. But you, in your brief to the Supreme Court, took a middle of the road approach, something that was not as far-reaching as the government purportedly was seeking and nothing as narrow as what Fisher was seeking. So tell us why we should not have a chicken little sky is falling kind of emotional reaction to what Fisher said yesterday.
What the court did in Fisher was that it adopted, as you said, a moderate interpretation, an intermediate interpretation of this statute, section 1512C2, which makes it a crime to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede any official proceeding. And the interpretation that it ultimately adopted was broader than what the defendant, a violent January 6th rioter, had asked for. He wanted an interpretation that limited the statute only to the destruction of evidence. And the reason he asked for that is because this statute was passed in the aftermath of the Enron scandal. And the government, by contrast, asked for an interpretation that applied to any type of obstruction at all. And the court adopted a position that I think is quite close to the position that we advocated in our brief, that takes a middle path. Now, in this case, Fisher won in the sense that the decision below is reversed and we'll have to go back down and ask whether Fisher's violent conduct falls into this moderate interpretation of the statute. But in 6 months or a year or 2 years, we're ultimately going to find out that it does, because there's no question in my mind that the violent protesters on January 6th impeded the use of an object, namely the electoral certificates, in an official proceeding, the counting of electoral votes. And so what we see here in Fisher is part of a larger pattern where there's a little bit of a setback for the prosecution that takes a lot of time. And so ultimately, I don't think it's going to make a difference in the guilt or innocence under this statute of the violent January 6 rioters, or ultimately of Donald Trump. But it will take months or years for us to find out whether that's actually true.
And Matthew, you also filed a brief backing the special counsel Jack Smith in the criminal immunity case that ended up in front of SCOTUS. Again, incredibly busy that you are. We obviously know now, the Chief Justice announcing yesterday that Monday will be the last day that we will have opinions released. Your thoughts about this criminal immunity decision that's imminently going to be coming out for Americans to hear on Monday?
Well, it seems I'm the sunny optimist of your guests. I actually think that we're again going to see an opinion that looks good for the president. I think it's certain that the court will say that some presidential conduct is immune. You can't make it a crime, for example, to veto a bill. But outside of that, I think there's a real question about how far the court goes in establishing a presidential immunity. But even more than that, just like with Fisher, even if the court gives President Trump everything that he wants, that he's immune for every official act that he took while he was president, he's still going to be subject to a trial as long as he doesn't drop the charges against himself next year. The reason is that if you look at the indictment, the vast majority of the conduct that's alleged that he's being charged with is clearly unofficial conduct. Outside of trying to malignly influence the Department of Justice, all of the conduct was taken in his unofficial capacity as a candidate who was trying to unlawfully reverse the results of a legitimate election. So what we have here again is a situation where the ultimate outcome actually, I think, is going to land against Donald Trump. But we've now been 7 months here waiting for the Supreme Court to tell us what the rule is, when no matter what the rule is, Donald Trump is going to lose. And so the ultimate upshot of this, I think, is that we've seen in every single case that we're talking about an enormous amount of delay. These judicial epicycles where we ponder what the right rule should be, when under any rule, Donald Trump should lose. And so it's the delay that ultimately risks so much.
Matthew, very quickly before I have to let you go, I have been pushing this idea that what we will see is Judge Tanya Chutkan get the case back from SCOTUS, and she conducts an evidentiary hearing of sorts wherein she parses out what constitutes official/unofficial acts to have what remains of the indictment. I mean, that's exactly what SCOTUS was asking during the oral arguments on this issue. Do you agree that we could see something of that ilk, like an evidentiary hearing where Americans could hear the sins of Donald Trump before November?
Yes, I think that's quite likely. In fact, if the court issues a rule where the district court, Judge Chutkan, has to decide which conduct that's alleged is official and what's not, I think an evidentiary hearing is likely to happen. And that will air so much of the facts that we actually know, but many Americans have sort of dropped down the memory hole. And so this fall, for Americans to see just how grave his crimes against democracy were in the 2020 election aftermath, I think that could serve an important public purpose. Of course, it would serve a judicial purpose, but it would also inform the American public about just who they're contemplating electing again.
Matthew Seligman, I appreciate your advocacy and your legal acumen. Thank you for sharing it with me and with our viewers today. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Katie.
Coming up, when you get knocked down, you get back up. Democrats and Republicans both navigating the fallout of this week's first presidential debate, plus backing Biden, how former President Barack Obama is trying to calm the nerves of some anxious Democratic voters by talking about his first presidential debate. That's next.
At Lisa, we're different from other mattress companies because everything we make is designed to offer better sleep to those who need it. Our mattresses are expertly designed in America for exceptional comfort and support. No matter who you are or where you come from, we all deserve a place to rest, which is why Lisa also donates thousands of mattresses to shelters each year. Shop the sale and wake up differently with Lisa.
We have a new home. What's next? We have a garage door that doesn't lift, and we have a gate that doesn't open.
So I went on Angie. It took me just a handful of minutes.
The vendors who came through Angie, you were more knowledgeable. They did higher quality work.
They wanted us to be happy with the work done as well.
We felt like we got the most value out of the contractor that we chose.
It is a beautiful garage, I will say.
Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Get started today at Angie.com.
For those in the market for flavor, Modelo Spiked Aguas Frescas. Inspired by the Mexican street classic and made with a splash of real fruit juice. Modelo Spiked Aguas Frescas. Boldly authentic, vibrantly flavorful.
Hey Einstein, how do I fix the Turbo Sugar 5000?
With Einstein AI, everyone's an Einstein.
Thank you so much. Talk soon. Einstein, summarize call.
Einstein, write product descriptions for the spring collection.
Now, everyone's an Einstein with Salesforce.
This is the best anti-aging serum I have ever used. Chabula Serum by True Botanicals. It targets 5 signs of aging. My skin looks so plump and glowy.
Chabula has been tested and proven to help deliver dramatic results. 100% saw softer and smoother skin after just 1 week.
It's completely transformed my skin. And like all True Botanicals products, it is clean and sustainable. I'm completely obsessed. You have to try it.
Shop Nordstrom or TrueBotanicals.com for 2 free gifts.
I know it's late and you all have families, but I'm just going to keep talking.
Just add crayon. Crayon mango for you. And boss, you get a crayon pineapple if you admit this could have been an email.
Gusto has been named the #1 small business payroll software by G2, NerdWallet, and Tech Republic, and Business.org, PC Mag, and Business.com. But what really makes Gusto special is our customers. They'll always be our #1. We make payroll, benefits, and HR less painful, so running your business is more joyful. Join 300,000 businesses already working with Gusto at Gusto.com.
To finally lose 80 pounds and keep it off with Golo is amazing.
I've been maintaining. The weight is gone, and it's never coming back.
With Golo, I've not only kept off the weight, but I'm happier, I'm healthier, and I have a new lease on life.
Golo is the only thing that will let you lose weight and keep it off.
Who loses 138 pounds in 9 months? I did. Golo's a lifestyle change, and you make the change, and it stays off.
The New York Times editorial board may be calling on President Joe Biden to drop out of the race, but Biden was back on the campaign trail in North Carolina, trying to lock in voters after Thursday's debate. So, too, was Donald Trump, who lied about his pending criminal cases during a rally in Virginia, while Biden defended his debate performance on Friday.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job.
Biden is using the weaponization of his Justice Department, the FBI, local district attorneys and attorneys general to try and win an election against his political opponent. That happens to be me. Do you know who I am?
Fact checked, that is not true. That is a lie. Joining me now, Tara Setmayer, co-founder and the CEO of the Seneca Project and a former Republican comms director, and Basil Smikle, the former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. He's also an MSNBC political analyst. My thanks to both of you for being here. Look, I'll speak frankly. I'm pro-Biden. I don't have a problem with what is going on right now. I find it to be absurd that people don't appreciate how absolutely existential a threat Donald Trump is. I think it's a binary decision. That's my opinion. It's my show. That's my opinion. But Basil, I'm going to start with you. The New York Times editorial board is calling on President Biden to leave the race after his debate performance on Thursday. Mr. Biden is not the man he was 4 years ago, according to the Times. The greatest public service he could do and perform is to announce that he will not continue to run for re-election. But it goes on to say, if the race did come down to Trump versus Biden, they would pick Joe Biden. So, Basil, should Joe Biden drop out of this race?
No, first of all, I strongly disagree with the opinion, but I also wonder whether it was really appropriate for them to do that. But having said that, you know, if Joe Biden just stood on that debate stage and said nothing and let Donald Trump speak for 90 minutes based on Biden's record and Donald Trump's statements, I think Joe Biden would have still won that debate. But I understand it's a visual medium. It's, you know, there's so much riding on the outcome of this election. The stakes are so high. People's feelings and emotions are so strong around what happens in this race. I get why there's some consternation and some disappointment, perhaps. But as you said, you know, if you really look at the choices that are being framed for the voter, you have a person in Joe Biden who has an outstanding record, not just as president, but also, frankly, through Kamala Harris and Hakeem Jeffries and so many others, uniting the party around a common vision, versus Donald Trump, who has suggested openly that migrants should fight each other for residency in this country. So when you put those two things together, I do think that the calls to have some kind of confrontation where we make a change midstream is premature.
You know, Tara, I want to stick with the idea that this really wasn't a debate. A debate is an opportunity for viewers that are watching to learn something about the candidates. And yes, maybe we do have a familiarity with Donald Trump and Joe Biden because we've seen them before. And yet, I don't think the onus should have been on Joe Biden to have to fact check Donald Trump in real time. I did have an issue with the structure of how this debate went. But, you know, there was this new Morning Consult poll that was taken after Thursday's debate, Tara, and it finds that it's an unchanged presidential race with President Biden getting more support, 45% of registered voters, Donald Trump getting 44%. And look, this is something that, you know, it takes some time for the effects of a big event like a debate to truly be reflected in polls. But when you look at those types of numbers, Tara, and with that caveat in mind, I mean, how much of a difference do these debates, and I'll put that in quotes, really make for voters?
Well, so far we've seen that they haven't really made that much of a difference. And that's not just because of what I've said. That's because of what we've seen so far in what others have shown in the past. I mean, you have Professor Altman from American University, who's the guy who predicted 9 out of 10 of the last elections accurately. He said, listen, this is not going to make a difference, and that it's absurd for Democrats to call for a change in their leadership because of the power of incumbency, the power of not having a contested primary. These are all parts of the characteristics of the metrics of what makes for a successful candidacy. So, you know, I think that all of the consternation around what happened on Thursday, I get it. It was jarring and it was not ideal. However, what we saw was President Biden the next day show up and demonstrate who he is and acknowledge that he had a bad debate, acknowledge his age, and promise the American people, look them square to the eye and say, I will never lie to you. He understands what the promise and resilience of the American spirit is, and that's encompassed in Joe Biden. That is not the vision that Donald Trump has. So because we had a debate and Donald Trump got away with lying for 90 minutes, and people are complaining about how CNN handled it. I think there's arguments on both sides, whether it was their job to fact check in real time or whether it was the candidate's job to do it. We could argue that, but I don't think it's the end all or be all. It's June. It is not November. And people need to pay attention and stay focused and keep their eye on the prize of what we need to do here. We need to stand up and fight back against MAGA. Donald Trump is an existential threat to this country, period. Joe Biden is not. And that is where the bottom line is. How dare the New York Times come out so prematurely and make a call like they did 24 hours after what happened at that debate? That's it? That's it? One bad debate, and now we're calling for Joe Biden to step aside? I must have missed the calls for Donald Trump to step aside after he was convicted of 34 felonies and is still facing dozens more. I must have missed the time when they decided to call for Donald Trump to step aside when he incited an insurrection or when he was found guilty of civil penalties for rape. This country and the media really needs to stay focused on what's at stake here and what the difference truly is between the two candidates, because I think they're doing the country a disservice.
You know, Basil, both sides have agreed, though, to go into a second debate on September 10th. I don't know what the merits are of that. I'll be very honest with you. If it is what we saw, which is 90 minutes of Donald Trump lying about Democrats ripping babies out of wombs after they're born and killing them, and lying about immigrants and the dog whistles about people that are coming to this country seeking a better life. It's intolerable. And the promises that are made, Basil, by somebody like Donald Trump saying that he will settle the Ukraine-Russian war as a president-elect before he is sworn into office. I have a problem with the idea that it's just going to be more of the same. Is it worth it, then, for Joe Biden to even go to that second debate?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And there were so many questions after the last debate as to whether or not even Donald Trump would agree to something because his side felt he did enough in that debate to win. Listen, I think any time that Joe Biden can go and show that split screen between competence and incompetence, I think is important for the voter. And I agree on this issue of fact checking, right, at Tara's point. Can the candidate, Joe Biden, really fact check in real time his opponent who is bent on lying, but also trying to put out sort of positive, proactive messages about what his administration has done and will do? That's difficult. There's a guy named Kyle Clark in Colorado who in real time was fact-checking Laura Boebert in their debate. And that's in a bit a master class on how to do it in real time if you're a moderator. But if you're the candidate, Joe Biden, I think anytime that you can go and show that distinction, show the American public why you are different and why your administration is going to be vastly different from what Donald Trump could bring, I think that's a good idea.
Let me be clear. Joe Biden fact-checked to the extent that he called Donald Trump a liar on at least 2 occasions, and he invoked malarkey several times. So I think he made it clear. We have to go, but I will say this, and I don't want to Monday morning quarterback Jake and Dana at all, but making Donald Trump answer the question that's posed would be a start. Making the candidate answer the question posed would be a start, in my humble opinion, and making them use that time, because if you're not, that's what the mute button's for. Tara Setmayer and Basil Smykel, thanks so much for being here, my friends. It's good to see you. And a quick programming note, don't forget to tune into Inside with Jen Psaki tomorrow at noon Eastern to catch Jen's conversation with House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. That'll be right here on MSNBC. Coming up next, killing the Comstock Act as Republicans work to roll back access to women's health care at the state and federal levels using 150-year-old zombie laws. My next guest thinks she may have a way to stop them. Congresswoman Becca Balint joins me after the break on how her proposed Stop Comstock Act will keep radical Republicans out of women's reproductive health. Keep it right here.
Want Ethereum exposure right in your brokerage account? Get it with symbol ETHE. Grayscale Ethereum Trust, the world's largest Ethereum fund. ETHE. Crypto investing begins here.
Siemens microgrid technology is helping New York City's Javits Center transform into one of the most sustainable convention centers in the U.S. We are showing that a clean energy future is possible.
I would have paid more to make it this easy, but with Blinds.com, I paid less. Way less. You can DIY or book a pro like I did. You'll get free design help, free samples, free shipping, and their 100% satisfaction guarantee.
Right now, save 50% site-wide during the Blinds.com 4th of July early access. Plus, don't miss out on premium special buys going on right now at Blinds.com. And you can pay monthly at 0% APR for up to 24 months with PayPal.
I needed some help. Good thing I knew someone. Or something.
Glad you called, Jay. It's time for an upgrade.
Awesome. I knew what I had to do. Because they never stop. No time to waste. This isn't sci-fi. This is precision AI.
Cuando nos sorprendemos, vivimos algo único. Un pequeño instante que nos despega de este planeta. Chicos, grandes, todos disfrutamos al vivir esa magia. Porque existen ciertos detalles tan únicos que simplemente podemos decir están hechos para impresionar, que están hechos para hacer de lo cotidiano algo sorprendente. Royal Prestige, nunca dejas de sorprenderte.
Saturday, September 7th, Brooklyn, New York. It's MSNBC Live Democracy 2024, our premier live audience event. Maddow, Psaki, Mitchell, Reed, Hayes, Steele, Menendez, Sanders-Townsend, O'Donnell, Wagner, Rule, Melber, Kornacki, and more. Join the MSNBC community in conversation. Visit msnbc.com/democracy2024 to buy your tickets today.
With Election Day just a little over 4 months away, conservatives are preparing for a possible second Trump term with a chilling manifesto set to strip a swath of communities of their rights by potentially using something called zombie laws. Congresswoman Becca Balint wrote in her op-ed for MSNBC, the Comstock Act, passed more than 150 years ago, was the result of one man's crusade against everything he deemed to be obscene, including, quote, any article or thing designed or intended for the prevention of conception or procuring an abortion. Republicans know that voters don't support a nationwide abortion ban, so reviving this zombie law is the easiest path to get their way. Joining me now is Vermont Congresswoman Becca Balint. She's a member of the House Judiciary and House Budget Committees. Congresswoman, it's always a pleasure to have you here on the show. Talk us through this zombie law and just how dangerous it would be for women's rights.
Absolutely. So you had a man, Anthony Comstock, who was around in the 1870s, and he had a crusade against everything that he deemed to be obscene, including any material that he deemed to be potentially used in abortion or contraception. And this has not been a law that's been enforced for a very long time. But you have in Project 2025, which is the Republican playbook for a second Trump term, which is, they're not being secret about it, Katie. They're saying, we're going to bring back this law and we're going to use it essentially to stop every single avenue for abortion and also for contraception. This is the playbook. It's happening in legislatures across the country, trying to restrict women's access to full reproductive health care. And we have the man at the top of the ticket. This is the playbook he's intending to use.
Yeah, and let's be clear, even though I'm not even going to call it a decision that we got from the Supreme Court on EMTALA out of Idaho. They just basically punted it post-November.
That's right.
But the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 policy agenda pledges to reverse the Biden administration's interpretation of EMTALA. And so when you look at that and you also look at Comstock Act, no matter what Donald Trump says on the debate stage, that he'll respect a decision that comes from SCOTUS when it comes to things like mifepristone, et cetera, Comstock Act actually would not allow mifepristone milestone to be delivered through the mail. But you also had something really interesting, Congresswoman. You also say that through this plan, that there's a clear connection between guns, abortion, and domestic violence that would spike in our country. Explain that to our viewers.
Yeah, so you have this situation right now, and I want to bring this more broadly out to how are we trying to control people's lives right now under the Republican the Republican playbook. And so whether it is reproductive rights, whether it's LGBTQ rights, whether it's access to guns, you have this situation where Trump and other Republicans are not at all interested in protecting women. They're not at all interested in doing whatever they can to prevent domestic violence. And so it is all part of this same playbook of trying to control our lives and making women second-class citizens. Absolutely.
So, Congresswoman, I also wanted to ask you, there's been a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of pearl clutching that came out of Thursday's debate. My last segment, I spoke about that with some of my friends about, their thoughts of the debate, your kind of takeaways from Thursday. And I'll pose the question I posed to them, which was, do you think there's a value in even having a second debate?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. Look, the president, he had what we call a moment of choking, right? Whether we've all had it as you go in. I think he was over-prepared, frankly, and he did not do his best. I think we all wanted him to have a much stronger performance. But the stakes are, as you said so eloquently in the last segment, the stakes are just too high for us not to understand that he is not running against another sane candidate. Like, he is running against a demagogue. He's running against somebody that wants to drag us back to the 1870s. He doesn't care about women. He doesn't care about people of color. He certainly does not care about my community. And frankly, Donald Trump spent 90 minutes lying and also trashing our country. He doesn't bet on America. He bets against America time and time again. And so for me, I don't know if there's value in a second debate. As you pointed out, I was screaming at the television the entire time, no fact checking. He was allowed to lie for 90 minutes. And does that serve the president? When he is not debating someone who is actually there to talk about policy and is not actually there to talk with value statements about how he's going to help actual people, real people. I came away so saddened by the whole experience, watching how we in this country are a hair's breadth away from a demagogue coming into power, a convicted felon who basically any kind of restraint that he had on him before is no longer there. The Supreme Court continues to rule in his favor on so many fronts. And so I think it is a lot of hand-wringing. When you look at the initial polling now, we're seeing it's not making a whole lot of a difference. People understand it was one night, and they understand that Trump is a congenital liar, and he will not be held to account.
Yeah, and I'm glad, Congresswoman, as I say goodbye, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that Donald Trump isn't for America. In fact, he called us a third world country, which, troubles me greatly. But to your point, it really is a binary choice. It really is a binary choice between good versus evil when it comes to November. Congresswoman Becca Balint, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Always happy to chat with you.
Coming up next, from the closet to the spotlight, the new first-of-its-kind documentary tracing how queer comedians spent the past century fighting for their place on stage. Comedy icon. And my friend Margaret Cho joins me next on how she helped reshape an entire industry as we celebrate the final weekend of Pride Month 2024. Don't go anywhere.
Strength is inside of you.
New Premiere by Kerastase Dual Action Repair Hair Care. With citric acid and glycerin, frees hair from calcium buildup, reconnects broken links between keratin chains, restoring up to 99% of hair's original strength. New Premiere by Kerastase.
The paper towel will absorb the acid.
That's crazy.
Green tea to calm acne. This is my favorite tip of the day.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Oh, that's genius. You just saved me $40.
Hims has helped millions of guys get treatment for their hair loss, sexual health, and mental health. At Hims.com, you can find a range of chews, sprays, serums, and pills made by combining multiple doctor-trusted active ingredients into innovative products formulated for results. Find the option that works for you. Get started today at hims.com.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can it keep me warm when I'm cold?
Wait, no, I'm always hot.
Sleep Number does that.
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Sleep Number does that.
Can it help us sleep better and better?
Please.
Sleep Number does that. 94% of smart sleepers report better sleep. Shop our lowest prices of the season with no interest until 2027. Sleep Number smart bed starting at $9.99. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
What is the dumbest thing you've ever wasted money on?
I was paying for 2 Netflix accounts over like 3 years.
That's like $1,400,000. How'd you figure that out?
I saw an app that shows you all the monthly subscriptions you have and how much you're paying.
So what'd you do then? Just like call and cancel, or?
I have a phobia of making calls, so absolutely I did not do that. The app, you can cancel the app.
What is the app called?
Rocket Money.
When my hair started to thin, I thought, am I going to have any hair left?
After I gave birth, my hair wasn't even thin yet. It was gone.
As I got older, I couldn't grow it past my shoulders.
Nutrafol has different formulas for all the different changes so many women go through.
Within 3 months, my hair is significantly fuller.
It's longer, it's thicker.
My friends noticed it. I felt like a completely different person.
Try the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com.
However you may choose to travel, we'll keep you moving forward. Enterprise, for lives in drive.
Numbers. They never lie. You can add them, subtract them, multiply, or divide them, and they tell it like it is, whether you like it or not. Because numbers don't have opinions. They don't lean politically to the left or to the right. They might seem dry, but they tell very human stories. Stories about the candidates, about the voters, about the country. In the end, numbers tell stories that words alone can't. And when you look at the world through numbers, somehow it all adds up.
If you see a queer stand-up comedian, I don't think you understand the adversities they've overcome.
Back when I was starting, there weren't really very many queer comics.
Things have got to change. Things have got to evolve.
If I never had sex with a woman again, I would still be a lesbian.
It was very important, the idea that we could be seen, that we should be seen, and that we can be funny.
I would not be a happy lesbian.
As LGBTQ+ Pride Month comes to a close, a new Netflix special is shining a light on trailblazing queer comedians. The documentary brings together multiple generations of all-star talent in the comedy world to tell the story of how far the community has come, while also showcasing exciting new talent who are pushing the boundaries. Joining me now, Margaret Cho, stand-up comedian and actress. Margaret, I want to start by saying annyeonghaseyo. It's always so good to have a fellow Korean. It's always good to have a fellow Korean on TV. And you are a fantastic doggy mom, so my thanks to you for always being such an upstanding supporter of rescues and doggies. Maybe your doggy is there.
Well,
there we go.
This is my
baby
girl, yes.
Yeah. I remember her. I met her before. So, Margaret, outstanding, the documentary. It centers around an exclusively queer stand-up comedy special at the Greek Theater featuring Lily Tomlin, Wanda Sykes, Rosie O'Donnell, and more. When you were coming up in comedy, though, could you have ever imagined that this kind of lineup would be possible?
No, and it's incredible. It's so amazing that we've come so far to be able to have shows like this, to be able to have an experience like this for queer audiences, for audiences everywhere, because even though we're queer comedians, we're not just for queer audiences, we're for everyone. And I love that we got to do this, and I love this film. Paige did such a beautiful job directing it, and I love everybody in it.
This documentary traces LGBTQ comedy history against the backdrop of the gay rights movement, from Stonewall to Anita Bryant to the AIDS epidemic. What role do you think comedy played in the larger fight for equality?
I think comedy represents hope, because laughter, if you really break it down, is the unexpected thought that forces you to take a breath, which will ensure your life for the next few seconds. And so hope, it's hope. Laughter is hope that we're going to make it. And I think that's what it is. It's where all sort of marginalized communities look to humor to have hope. And this is something that I think we have in common.
You also say in the documentary that comedy can be a coping mechanism for racism, sexism, and homophobia. How has adversity factored in to the way that you've approached your comedy?
I think it's really like trying to explain to audiences the feeling of being a woman of color, the feeling of being a queer woman, the feeling of never seeing myself out there, so having to create that experience or having to explain invisibility, which is hard, but also it's kind of a funny project. And so to me, I think it's always been about explaining to people what it's like to be me.
And, you know, this documentary also highlights, Margaret, the younger generation. You've got Joel Kim Booster, Bob the Drag Queen. You know, fantastic talent. How does it feel to see this younger generation of comedy talent? And how do you think that they're picking up the mantle from what you guys are still continuing to?
Psoriasis can't filter out the real you. So go ahead, live unfiltered with the one and only Sotyktu, a once daily pill for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis and the chance at clear or almost clear skin. It's like the feeling of finding you're so ready for your close-up, or finding you don't have to hide your skin, just your background. Once daily Sotyktu was proven better, getting more people clearer skin than the leading pill. Don't take if you're allergic to Sotyktu. Serious reactions can occur. Sotyktu can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB. Serious infections, cancers including lymphoma, muscle problems, and changes in certain labs have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, liver or kidney problems, high triglycerides, or had a vaccine or plan to. Sotyktu is a TYK2 inhibitor. TYK2 is part of the JAK family. It's not known if Sotyktu has the same risks as JAK inhibitors. Find what plaque psoriasis has been hiding. There's only one Sotyktu, so ask for it by name. So clearly you. Sotyktu.
Fruit and vegetable ingredients have never been more convenient.
It's easy for me to recommend Balance of Nature. It's so simple. It's amazing getting the fruits and vegetables ingredients in 3 red and 3 green capsules.
I take Balance of Nature. I think it's a good product. It's convenient. It's a way to start off with a plus. I can do little capsules in the morning and I'm off to work, you know.
I would recommend Balance of Nature. It's so easy to do every day. I really am happy that I came across it. I feel great, and who doesn't want to feel great?
Splash into your summer with Balance of Nature summer savings. Go to balanceofnature.com and sign up as a new preferred customer to get 50% off your first set. Go to balanceofnature.com or call 1-800-246-8751 and get this limited time offer by using discount code LOVE.
Every day, more dog people are deciding it's time for a fresh approach to pet food. Developed with vets, made from real meat and veggies, portioned for your dog, and delivered right to your door. It's smarter, healthier pet food.
Our daughter just bought her first house.
All by herself.
So we went to go see it.
She knew exactly how she wanted everything.
But then he pointed out the gutters.
You think you've raised them right, and then...
She didn't know. You have to call Leaf Filter.
Leaf Filter's patented filter technology keeps debris out of your gutters for good.
Parenthood is such a wild ride.
It's a lot easier with Leaf Filter.
Join millions of satisfied homeowners. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER today or visit leaffilter.com.
It's a hard conversation to have. When you die, this is what's going to happen.
Trust and will makes it really easy and succinct for people to go out there, create their estate plan. It's such an important thing to have. The things and the people that you care about are taken care of.
Create your estate plan at trustandwill.com.
This is the first party she remembers. Her first graduation. This is the big one. This is her first apartment. Her first real art. Her biggest love. Her best day. With so many more to come.
Very good day to all of you from MSNBC World Headquarters here in New York. Welcome, everyone, to Alex Witt Reports. We begin with new reaction to the New York Times editorial board urging President Biden to drop his re-election bid after his debate against former President Donald Trump. Anita Dunn, Biden campaign strategist, tried to put it in perspective on MSNBC this morning.
I thought Barack Obama put it best yesterday, and I well remember being on sets like this in 2012 after the first debate that he conducted. He said bad debates happen, okay? And bad debates do happen. Good debates happen. As the president said yesterday, maybe it wasn't, maybe he isn't as great a debater as he used to be. I would just tend to say it wasn't his greatest debate, but it is 90 minutes in a campaign and in an administration where he has achieved enormous things. So maybe it wasn't a great debate, but he has been a great president.
Fellow Democrats also voicing their support for the president, saying Trump's debate performance also deserves scrutiny.
Let's be crystal clear. Donald Trump is a liar and lied over and over and over in that debate. And President Biden told the truth. He was honest. He showed the kind of man that he is. He took on Donald Trump on the issues that he needed to take him on. And I am proud of our president.
Both candidates hit the campaign trail Friday, delivering these messages to voters.
We're in the battle for the soul of America. But I look around at the pride, hope, and light that all of you bring. I know is a battle we're going to win and continue to make progress. LGBTQ plus people are some of the most inspiring people I know.
Many people are saying that after last night's performance that Joe Biden is leaving the race. But the fact is, I don't really believe that because he does better in polls than any of the Democrats they're talking about.
President Biden is a fundraiser on Long Island today. His re-election campaign saying the president remains committed to his second debate against Trump in September. We're going to ask former spokesman for Hillary Clinton, Philip Brynas, about how the campaign can move forward. That'll happen in our next hour. Meantime, after weeks of waiting, the Supreme Court is set to rule on Donald Trump's immunity on Monday. That is the same day Steve Bannon is set to report to prison. The Supreme Court rejecting an appeal to delay the sentence of the far-right